Welcome back, everyone, to the Creators Table. I am Allison. We are here today with a whole host of awesome creators to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is consent and risk and how it plays into the experiences that they create. We'll start off by having everybody say who they are, what their show is, what they do a little bit, and then we'll get into it.
My name is Kris. I am from the Great American Horror Road Trip and also part of Crucible. As you can see, advanced treatment, that is my remote experience that I have. And you can find me on YouTube and Facebook at the Great American Horror Road Trip.
Hello, I'm Chainsaw Queen. This is Paul, and we're one half of Black Mass. I function more as the operations, and Paul's one of our creative directors. And yeah, you can find us on Instagram, Black Mass. There's no C, and the A's are 4s.
That's Paul, by the way.
I'm Josh Simon. I am the creative director of the Blackheart Collective and one half of the Unstable Nightmare People. You can find me everywhere, specifically on this channel, or at black.heart.collective on Instagram.
Hi, I'm Nicci.
I'm Sam.
Yeah,
You go ahead.
we're the creators of PDXtreme Horror. We're mostly doing remote shows right now, hopefully in person at some point. And we can be found on Instagram, Facebook.
Yeah, PDXtreme Horror.
PDXtreme Horror.
And PDXtreme is just one word.
All right, well, my name is Magyor-Phillips. I am the founder and creative director of Twin Knives Production Company and a member of the Blackheart Collective, subbing in for both myself and my husband, who's the other half of Twin Knives. He's in bed because he works a real job. So just me. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook at Twin Knives. And then, of course, Blackheart Collective. It's probably not going to be the same in the recording, but as Josh said, Blackheart Collective.
All right. We recording?
We are.
Cool. All right. My name is Dunfield. I am 1/3 of the Crucible, the in-person Crucible. So we're an extreme immersive horror experience in Salt Lake City, Utah. And you can find us either on Instagram or you can find us on Facebook via Facebook Messenger. So I work with Kris.
Fantastic. So a lot of great people doing a whole range of different forms of experiences here. So the first question, the kind of basic definition question, is what is consent? But specifically in the realm of immersive experiences, of extreme horror experiences, what does it mean for a participant to consent, and what sorts of things does it require from them in order for you to know that a participant is a fully consenting individual?
Who's going?
I'll say right off the bat, I mean, consent is just an agreement between two parties understanding what they will have done to them.
Yeah, and I think that what we look for in when you're dealing with immersive horror, whether it's physical or done remote, is we're looking for informed consent. And I think that's like the biggest thing, is making sure that the audience knows what they're up against, and from there making the agreement, yeah, this is okay to do these things to me.
And making
the
the good state of mind, good, hopefully, state of body as best as can for each individual, and having a detailed explanation of what's to come. No sneaky things slid in there, but just having an audience member have a full understanding of what could, not even what will, but what could happen, and consenting to every part of that in a healthy state of mind, and preferably in writing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
I would say that, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and definitely doing it in writing, and then for us doing it in person as well, kind of, having the same thing printed out. This is what you printed, we're good, so having kind of both of that, and ideally on video, and just having everything. Yeah.
And I think it's funny sometimes, like the waiver, the laundry list of things that could potentially happen sometimes scares people off. But again, like some of these things probably aren't going to happen, but just so you're aware, it might happen because, you know, we can't control every single element. We try. Safety is important, but, you know, this is what you're going into. But I think that's important. I think that was Mel's, that, you know, necessarily giving away everything, like here's what's going to happen to A to Z, but to at the very least be informed and have like a heads up. And I think the variety of us do that on very different levels. I think some people are a little bit more like Black, if I may, like this is kind of what you're getting into a little bit more than we do. I think a little bit more, here's an umbrella and these things might happen under this umbrella. But all of that, just knowing that it might happen is super important.
Yeah, so let's talk about waivers and what do your waivers look like? What sorts of things do they have on them? What are people agreeing to when they sign them?
Well, I think it's good to start with that there's a very foundational difference between the culture of waivers between remote shows and in-person shows. It's contested in some degree whether it's even necessary for an online show. Josh knows this. I absolutely love referring to a very famous Tyler, the Creator tweet that I cannot quote word for word, but to summarize how you get bullied on the internet, just close your computer. There's a lot of people who think that way. I very much believe that an online experience is equally as emotionally involved as an in-person one can be, and that waivers are absolutely necessary, but can be signed in a slightly more informal manner. Doesn't have to be like printed and faxed for what year is it, but a very strongly definite mail.
Yeah, we definitely modified our waiver from, you know, taking out all the physical stuff that may happen, but I mean, there's still emotional stuff that can happen to you, whether you're, I mean, and that's true for some of the variety of shows too. Some of our shows, we don't, you know, touch anybody ever, and that's a different level of liability or like waiver assumption of risk versus hearing somebody's story, intimacy, for example, where we were very hands off, but that was a really emotional show that somebody sat through for 1 hour. Yeah, but definitely the modification for virtual versus in person.
Right. And you'll never know every trigger that's possible.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, different people have different triggers, and they may be something as simple as a plate of peas that reminds them of somebody that did them wrong in their childhood, all the way to something that's way more explicit. I use that as an example because that's a weird trigger of mine. See, and you know, I'm not gonna be like emotionally distraught about it, but that certainly brings up a memory. Had I, you know, if I was a different person, that might be something way more impactful than to myself.
Yeah, I mean, and you definitely can't cover everything. There are things that people have no idea. Maybe a song that comes on in the background while people are waiting to enter something, and just the atmosphere combined with the memory, something like that happens. What about for when it comes to more physical, more hands-on activities? I do want to say, I feel like the question of like, would this hold up in court comes up pretty frequently. And I feel like something that people should understand is that none of y'all want to go to court, right? Like you're not going to test that if possible, I assume. Don't want to speak for you. But I personally feel like participants shouldn't be going to something if they think there is a chance they're going to end up in court. Like the waiver is there, but perhaps that should be where the line is. But for those of you who are taking more hands-on physical risks, what does the waiver look like for you? Have you had it reviewed legally? How does that function for you?
Yeah, I can weigh in on that a little bit. So in our seasonal haunt, we actually did hands-on for a number of years. We were actually one of the first seasonal haunts to start doing hands-on horror back when we started. And so along with the experience and the research that we did to take that to the next level in an extreme immersive horror experience, I think that that's very important to keep that in mind, that you have an understanding between yourself and the participant that, hey, you're agreeing to have possibly, you know, the whole list of things done to you, or we may leave a couple of things out, but this is an agreement between us and you that we agree to keep you as safe as humanly possible in the experience and keep you informed of what's going to be happening, but you also have to give that consent and agree to it as well, so that at the end of the experience, there's no real surprises. Like others have mentioned, you never know what's going to be somebody's trigger, but that's why in our waiver, we do mention things like if you have PTSD, if you were previously in the military, if, something that's going to trigger you that could potentially be a danger to ourselves as the creators or the actors, or yourself, then that's something that we need to know about. Safety is very much important to us. And although in the Crucible, we do have both a pretty heavy mixture of psychological horror as well as physical interaction, and, physical endurance, it is equally important to know if you have, stable, sound mind, at least enough to go through the experience. So
there's one thing I feel like part of the thing with the waiver is kind of, it's a process. And I think part of that is gaining information from them, asking them what physical issues they may have, what kind of, it's not just, here's what's going to happen to you. Are you in or out? It's learning a little bit about them, and, whether things can be modified or not depends on your show, your company. But you need to know, like, if they have asthma or, I go through, the extreme haunts and I have asthma, but it's really low key. And so I always bring, I have an inhaler with me, but that's something I always let them know. And I have my name on, so I just think it's important to, it's not just a piece of paper,
Yeah, the honesty is so important. I think that people need to know that those modifications can happen. I think Kris has spoken before of having a shellfish allergy. And that doesn't rule Kris out from doing shows that might involve shellfish, but there's going to be a problem if Kris does not let the people involved know about it. Yeah, so I like that idea that it's like about getting information from the participants as well, and that kind of exchange. And so that happens before the experience. How do you establish the ongoing consent during the experience, or know when consent may be withdrawn or when it's time to check in?
We definitely have.
Sorry. We're big on having a safe word, but also not even just a verbal, but having a signal that we can give them, just so we know. I mean, that was a big thing even in our last remote show with Sam, was a lot of the stuff he went through. Poor Sam. He had a physical sign that he could give me to let me know to let up when things were getting too intense for him, and I could know to stop or just ease up.
Yeah. Yep. And I think that applies as well. I just lost my train of thought.
In person. Yeah, I think.
I lost my train. Damn it.
I think it works well in person too. Just saying, hey, if for any reason you can't tell us the safe word, give us this signal. Let us know.
That's what I was gonna say. It has to thinking through each scene and knowing that, so not just saying like my hand or something being a signal, but that may not work for every scene. So like actually going through the show and thinking what signals are gonna, so really being specific.
And I think also not just having the safe word, but making sure that all of your cast and crew are aware of the safe word and also of anybody's. So like we have the laundry list of like, hey, we would rather you, be physically fit and mentally fit. But again, if you have a shellfish allergy, if you have asthma, if you have a messed up, can we cuss in this? Can I say bad words?
Heck yeah.
Fucked up arm, let us know so that we can then, and what we'll do is we'll tell all our cast and crew, like, here's the lineup for today. Here's Sam, he's got asthma. Here's Kris, he has a shellfish allergy. Yeah. Here's Paul, and he's got a messed up arm, which we're going to tape so that everyone knows to lay off that arm if there happens to be anything physical. And I think we had such a big umbrella of assumption of risk, especially when we started, because, we didn't want to know, we didn't want people to know who we were yet. So there was that anonymity. But we still kind of left the laundry list there, except for a couple of things, just because you never know, what's going to happen that's outside of your show storyline. But our stories are never mostly about the physical aggression. And so that's why we allow things for like, hey, if you have a bum knee, cool, tell us. That's not going to kick you out of the show. That just means we're not going to put you down on your knees or be as hard as you or whatever in that instance. So absolutely what we talked about earlier is like, it's a two-way street. You got to tell us what's up with you so that we can care for you in a different way. And we'll make those modifications in their show and tell our cast and crew like, hey, don't go 100% in this scene. Do this instead, where it still seems as intense, but take it a little slower in this way. And like all the different training that comes with that, we train our cast and crew for the safe word to, what to do if that's going on. Because I think that's important too. You might have a cast member that doesn't know what to do. Also important to have that follow-up as to what happens when that does happen, even if your production doesn't often have safe words.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be like a constant good faith contract going on between two parties. That's from beginning to end, and if both parties aren't acting in good faith, then it's not going to be as fun for everybody, and I think that's we take it on good faith that like our customers are here to have a good time and enjoy this story and be entertained.
Also the next level of like, even if somebody doesn't say a safe word or do a nonverbal whatever it is, also having some sort of level of training or somebody in the room that can sense, hey, that person's not safe wording, but they're done and they need to be cut off.
Yeah.
The bartender in the room.
So I definitely want to return to that idea of like how we know when people are done, but I was wondering, as long as we are on the topics of safe words, if Chase or Kris could speak to the waived safe word concept in Crucible and how that works in that experience.
It's all you, buddy.
You got it. Yeah, so we do have a version where you can waive your safe word. Definitely want to explain what that means though. So we in Crucible also have a safe word as well as a nonverbal safe action that they can use at any point something is too much for them. We also do have somebody that is medically trained on staff at all times and ready to go. I have a little bit of a medical background. I'm not currently certified, but I do have a medical background, and we do have an EMT that's on staff that looks for those nonverbal cues. And, if somebody goes unresponsive, we do have a way to check with them. But going off of the waiving the safe word, so what will happen in that situation is if somebody says their safe word and let's say they're at a level 10, which is the only time you can waive your safe word, we will just kindly remind them in that situation. We'll say, in character, we'll say, hey, just so that you're aware, you have waived your safe word. So if you are using your safe word, that would mean that you would end your experience right here. So we do give them a slight reminder, just kind of a little freebie, that if they say that word, their experience will end. And that's worked really well in the past. We haven't had any issues with that. So that's how we handle things at Crucible.
So it's a little bit more high stakes, but it is still a way to totally withdraw when that is needed. So let's return to the idea of how you know when it's time to stop, if something isn't said, if the signal isn't given, both in the in-person shows and for remotes as well. When do you know when it is time to pull someone?
I'll go. In one of the very first rounds of advanced treatment, I had to break character finally and kind of talk with the person going through, because I started realizing that he was so immersed and so into it that he actually was thinking that he was being stalked and that there were people in his house with him. And I found out through a friend of his who actually had a phone call with him and then told me, hey, it's getting really serious with him. So I had to step in and say, look, man, remember, this is a show. things are being said to you in a way to keep the experience going. But I feel at this point the show needs to end and we need to just move forward. Everything that's happened has all been part of a show. And then I broke it down and we talked. But that was the only time. I've had other times where people I've just kind of, you watch their, in a remote, you got to really kind of watch how they're talking and their mental health. It's hard for some remotes that are just done over text. At least with advanced treatment, I have therapy sessions so I can actually see and talk to them and have one-on-ones with them and kind of see where they're at mentally. And that's how I kind of judge when it's time to pull the plug or when I can go a little bit harder with them.
I think it's important to have checks in character that you can use. So often one of the ones that we'll do is we'll say, hey, can you tell me your first and last name? Can you tell me where you are right now? And whether they respond, you know, I'm at St. Jeffrey's Asylum, or, you know, I'm doing the Crucible experience. Those are all acceptable answers. You know, we'll ask them what the date is, you know, just to kind of check their mental health and make sure that they're not going completely, you know, non-responsive with us. So
I just kind of want to throw in that while not necessarily extreme or immersive in the sense that we normally talk about, I train a pretty large group of actors at a traditional haunted house. And I attempt to teach all of them the difference between a good scare in a fictional sense and when you have pushed someone to an uncomfortable point. A lot of that's body language. I notice in regular haunted houses, you know, it's very common to cover your ears, pull your arms in, crouch down, fall down. I've seen all of it, but that's a good place to begin, is when you see someone have a physical response big enough that they have hurt themselves, even if it's not serious. You know, a fall on the ass in the gravel is going to hurt, but it's not going to kill you. But that is the point when you as a performer owe it to them as a paying customer to ease back a little bit and let them readjust. And I think very similar concepts apply to more intense experiences. When their response or actions is strong that it could be damaging to them or you, it's time to pull back and it's time to let them mentally readjust to what's going on or offer them a way out. And there's ways to do that without quote unquote breaking character. But I also think a lot of performers are far too obsessed with the idea of staying in character and will sometimes disregard, you know, the fucking reality that we live in because they want to keep being, I don't know, Scary Terry, the Afro clown. I don't fucking know.
I love it.
I think the part about effectively in a performance environment is not getting too lost as a performer. It's just as important on our end to not get too lost in what we're doing. Very easy to do. Your what's the word I'm looking for? Your pride is on the line sometimes in those scenarios, but your pride is never more important than the people who showed up to support you. So I think most of it is body language because people also have their pride and they're very often not willing to say that they are too scared or they are too uncomfortable. So body language, certain phrases, you know, if someone says, I'm going to punch you to one of my actors, like that is the time when it's no longer a fear reaction and it's become a violent reaction. And I think that just applies all the way across the board is to think, are these people responding to my character or responding to my presence? It's not the same thing.
Yeah. In remotes, it's always trying to figure out when exactly someone's had too much in remotes, because, you know, there have been times where we've pushed limits emotionally for sure. And it's always this consistent demeanor check of the audience. You know, are they moving around along with everyone else? But usually when someone's had too much in a remote, there is this demeanor change where it feels like fourth wall breaks and you can tell that the direction of the conversation has changed. And that's the stuff we look for a lot. You know, we're always auditing our audience and it's multiple people. Mel's has been there for it, you know, and we are legion. There are many of us all trying to watch the audience and say, okay, looking at their reactions, engaging things. And then I spend a huge amount of time doing in character double checks. I often play like a really, really evil character and then I play a really kind of sweet one. So I have the ability to kind of move into a place and be like, hey, how are you doing? That still stays in character. but once we start seeing things like major demeanor changes, or what would be considered erratic, outside of the person's normal behavior, regardless of the, situation, that's when things like fourth wall breaks happen. And, we always try to make everyone aware that, hey, like, if we feel like, what I mean, we're going to call you. And so, but it is interesting to try to do in a remote, because you have that separation, but you can still have this huge impact on people. Just gauging by the amount of people who have cried on the phone with me who were like on this call. So
now that we're talking about teams a little bit, and Mel's mentioned training, I'm interested in what kinds of research you've done as creators around safety risks, whether physical or psychological, and how you train your people, your co-creators, your actors, to do things safely. I mean, how does one learn to waterboard somebody safely?
I think for our waiver and whatnot, like the research as far as that, I actually looked at a couple of different waivers. For those of you who don't know, we used to work with Heretic. So looking at that and a couple of different ones, and I just kind of Frankensteined a waiver that was cohesive out of that. And then I also wanted to mention, before I start talking about training, if I may, that like that consent stuff also is a two-way street. Like we also have stuff in our waiver that's about the guest coming through, that they ought to be clean and sober and functional, not smelly, because my cast doesn't need to deal with that either, and making sure that people are not coming in totally drunk or, totally gross. But what we have started doing recently, and especially because we had a little bit more time during COVID, is to do a little bit more safety training with our cast and crew. And what that involves is kind of basic stuff, how to, blindfold somebody, how to move somebody while they're blindfolded, and how to be aware of your surroundings, how to also be aware of another person in your scene, and just to always be looking for set, looking at the guest, looking at the person working with the guest, and just to be aware of what's going on. And part of that comes from, I am a professional wrestler, so I do a lot of stunt training, whatnot, and working how to fall. And again, all of that is about your surroundings and where is your opponent, where are the other people, there's a ring. So I have tried to apply that right into the haunt world as best as possible and give that training to our cast and crew. So like, hey, be aware that there's a wall there, or a prop, or the guest and where their legs are. So I think part of it is just practicing being aware of the surroundings. Also practicing anything you're going to do on yourself, or with somebody that you trust, that's a partner or co-creator, just so that you know your own limits and know everyone's done it.
Yes.
Come here, let me try this. What are you doing? That works. That doesn't work. That's awesome. I'm not alone in that. But those types of things I think are important.
Exactly.
We practice what we're going to do before we go and do it on somebody else. You're not just going to walk in a room and never have done it before and just do it.
Sometimes it's a matter of simple as like checking a medical textbook on like, hey, is that pressure point going to be a good thing or a bad thing?
Knowing like, where's your jugular? Where are the soft points? Where are the no-no spots?
A lot of it is sort of basic, sort of like medical training, mixed with, sports training. There really sort of does need to be like sort of a degree in this sort of thing in a way, because it's cobbled together from so many like little other parts,
Yep, and just applying all of that to a show, is super important. But yeah, practicing, making your cast and crew practice on each other. Practice in the room that you're going to be using on the set, so that they know their surroundings. Yep. Don't just throw somebody in for the first time and not know what's what and what's where. And we've done travel shows where we have the room and we quickly have to recognize where the room is and where things are. But the more you do it, obviously the better you'll be at it. So yeah, practice. Sorry.
And just plan for everything to go wrong.
Yes.
Just plan for everything to go wrong, so that you.
Well, I will say one of my favorite things when I go to Utah is stopping at the School of Chaos with Chase. I'll tell you what, it is such a fun experience because he's such a good teacher, and he just walks you through and shows you in detail how it's done. You get to see behind the curtain, but then you also get to experience it yourself, because like you said, if it's being done, if you're doing it to someone, you have to have it done to you to know how it feels, to know the limits and whatnot. And I'll let Chase take it from here, but he is an awesome teacher and knows exactly how to train his team.
Yeah, I appreciate that, man. I really enjoy, mentoring my cast and crew when they need it. A lot of them, we have a handful of things that we look at when we are going through kind of the mock torture elements and how to do them properly. First, I would say tenure. We don't let just anybody into the extreme immersive experience that is Crucible. I myself have about 20 years of seasonal haunting experience, plus again, like I mentioned before, working with hands-on and pushing the limits on the extreme hands-on portions of things. But yeah, it's also a lot of trial and error, just like the people from Black Mass and everybody has said so far. You need to give your actors places to fail, safe places to fail, and also a safe place to succeed, so if they do something right, you make sure that they know that they're doing it right. And if they're doing it wrong, then first of all, they're most likely going to experience what it's like to do it wrong, because we don't let you do any of the mock torture techniques unless you've experienced it yourself. I think that's only fair, so that they know what the participant is going through. But like they mentioned as well, it does take a lot of research. You're kind of doing a basic medical course. You need to know in extreme temperature changes even what happens to people's bodies. And with waterboarding, you need to know that people can literally drown. It's called dry drowning on land if you do it the improper way. So it takes a lot of responsibility on both ends. It is a two-way street. But yeah, I really enjoy the training. It's a lot of fun. It's definitely beats teaching a class in school or something like that, math class.
Shots fired, Paul and Reyna.
Well, just to tack one little thing onto that, one of the best pieces of training you can have for working in any format of horror theater is experience, is going through other stuff of all varieties. I learned so fucking much about physicality from going to Haunted Hoochie, and specifically from going to the Haunted Hoochie in a regular year and then going in a COVID year. I know everybody has feelings on the Hoochie, whatever. I live in Podunk, PA. It's fun as shit.
I'm writing it down. I want to look it up. I have no idea what that is.
It's a full contact boo haunt that costs way more money than any of us in this room have ever seen at the same time.
But it's so worth it though. I've heard so many good things about it.
About their history you don't like, but I bring it up because it is not marketed as what we view as an extreme haunt. But by going there, I saw how a bunch of messed out rednecks handle people, and I love experiencing it. But it gives a lot of credence to creating spaces for people to be interacted with that way, rather than simply allowing a free-for-all in a crowded haunted house environment. It's not a free-for-all. They do an amazing job at the Hoochie, like huge props for their trading. But it's very interesting to compare that to what we see as more organized, sequential, extreme experiences. And that just goes all over. Like, I love doing shows. I still, I'm literally counting down to Sleep No More. There's new dates put up, like it's coming. But doing all these different shows gives you the perspective of what you're doing to somebody else because you're having it done to you. I would never, you know, yes, you can practice on your friends, you can do X, Y, and Z, but there is a very different dynamic when it is a complete stranger. And it makes you understand what it's going to feel like when you as the stranger do that to somebody else. And so you know, and this is no shade to people who maybe can't afford or are not close to things. That's not what I'm saying at all. But if this is a form of entertainment that you really want to go into making, you are better off to have done some, or at least be very aware and close to people who have done some, whether as a participant or a creator, because you learn your best and you are the best trained through word of mouth and personal experience, in my opinion.
You're all friendly people. You chat with each other and share ideas and information.
I actually hate Joshua Simon. I don't know if anyone else can hear that.
Well, we can roll them out in that
God
case, but
damn.
I don't even know who that lady is.
Yeah, I think I agree with Mel's on that. We both started out going, obviously knowing about the place we won't name, which we never went to, but also just we started going to the full contact house out here called House of Shadows. It was a lot of just being grabbed, stuffed in boxes.
It's a cool in-between because it's full contact and they give you the whole rundown of, you know, be prepared to die and you can't sue us, but it's, you know, it's a boo con, but with, you know, being tossed around and stuff. So that was sort of like, and
then jumping completely in and then doing Crack versus Heretic
for
our first big boy, and then going to England. So I mean, and then also some of our training also came from playing a certain game with friends and just kind of learning how those different tortures in the game would work.
Well, just the practice of herding people around. You know,
because we'd push people around, bring them in,
or just herding people and putting them into a car. You know, just the process of really basic stuff. You know, because we've only been around for a couple of years, and you know, our training is we're the actors, and we now have one other actor that we trust with. You know, I mean, he's our best friend. He's like, he married us. He's our efficient. So, you know, like that's our only other actor.
And he's never done anything. So all his training has just become us. Yeah, like us doing stuff too. And we're like, hey, let us shock you.
Or playing the card games
let
with
Nicci
us.
waterboard you and show you how.
But the remote shows for us have been, you know, just, you know, here, you know, our remote shows have been very different from the you know, and I wanted to mention that it was that, you know, I know there's sort of the longer term ones that you know, Blackheart and, you know, advanced treatment that, you know, there's a lot of different kind of engagement, whereas with the ones, you know, we do, it's like you're here for an hour, you're watching a thing, and we have had situations where afterwards we've had to kind of talk to people that bring it down, but it you know, with the ones that kind of are more of a video and kind of go by, you know, even though they're extremely intense in an hour, you can have that like planned like 10-minute, like, you know, they don't know necessarily that there's a planned 10-minute, but it's there because we know that they may need to, you know, be reassured on some things, or you know, we've had questions about safety things, and it's like that's our period of time to be like, no, actually there was someone watching me in the corner, I was not alone, you know, while I was in this world. So
Jay had to talk through one of our participants. She definitely called him panicking, and Jay talked her down, and it was good. You know, he just kind of came back in, and later while we were setting up for the callback, he's like, yeah, I talked her down, everything's fine.
So but for training, we've just kept it really tight. And we are, you know, at this point we really are the actors.
Weeks and weeks of training before we even put on the show, like.
I like that mention of learning from the game, and then we have, you know, actually looking at medical textbooks. I am in circus, and so I'm kind of adjacent to a lot of ritual ordeal communities, people that put themselves and each other through things for spiritual enlightenment. And they learn from medical textbooks, but also people who do extreme sports and scuba divers and people who do jujitsu. Like lots of ways to learn about breath that way. And people who, you know, your little finger hurts and they can tell you what nerve path exactly is going to. I think that when you are making people feel like they're in danger, you can't know too much, would be my thoughts on it. And it's good to hear all of the different methods you guys have taken and the ways that you interact with your people. Are these things you can learn yourselves? Can you effectively practice waterboarding yourself without a partner?
No, because
Absolutely not.
not you stopping. Yeah, you have full
So
control.
gotta work with a team.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, when we train waterboarding, it's usually like a minimum of about 3 people, because it's the teacher, you know, with the person that you're teaching, plus somebody observing what's going on from the outside. So you'd never want to try, you know, waterboarding alone by any means.
No, it's
You
just
can't do it
weird.
properly, honestly.
Yeah.
So
You're just drinking water sloppily.
right.
Everyone should
You're just
hydrate.
really
Though.
thirsty.
Hydration is very important.
Right.
So we're going to wrap up here in a second, but before I get everybody's final thoughts, I just want to ask, is what you do torture?
Simulated.
Yeah, there's simulations. There's, you know, buzzwords that you're gonna hear. Oh my God, waterboarding. It's Guantanamo. But no, I mean, it's all consented to. That's if you consent to something, it's not torture. I think that, you know, it sort of applies to other scenes. You know.
We have fake murder scenes. We don't really murder people.
Simulation.
I think it's always great to remind the immersive theater going audience that in as much as many of us enjoy the art of writing or acting or anything else, we all like magic tricks. We all like the illusion of it. This is the illusion of danger presented in the safest possible way. That's what makes people get their rocks off doing this, because you're not actually going to die. And it's always just important to remember that this should both be, but it is both enjoyable and a livelihood for a lot of us. And people generally don't get very far in life professionally. I mean, I don't know, I guess you could be like a James Bond level assassin sometimes, but like none of us, you know, we're out here trying to put on shows. That's what it all boils down to at the end of the day, is a work of fiction. It's Disney World, you know, it's no different.
Awesome. Well, I think that is a perfect note to wrap things up on. Let's go through everyone again. Any final thoughts you want to share, and just tell everyone again where they can find you. And we can start again with Kris.
All right. You can find me on the Great American Horror Road Trip Facebook and YouTube page, and also, while we still have a few showings left, of Advanced Treatment.
Thanks for listening all. We're Black Mass. Oh, that didn't show up right. Dang. We're Black Mass. You can find us mostly on Instagram. If you want to experience one of our experiences, blackmass@gmail.com. Ask us for an application. We'll look at, see if you are somebody that should go through our show, and then we'll let you in. We got Switchblade Romance, directed and written by Alex, yeah, I said that right. Coming up. So if you're an approved applicant, you'll get more information. And if you're not, I'm an approved applicant, so you can get more information. But yeah, that's where we are.
And you can always find us on Instagram at black.heart.collective, or of course the Unstable Nightmare People. We're always making new stuff. And as for myself, you can find me laying in the road drinking bleach.
No.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Right, yeah, and we can be found on Instagram and Facebook as PDXtreme Horror. You can also email us at pdxtremehorror@gmail.com to get on our list for shows, which we have a new one coming out very, very soon. Very excited. It'll be a remote show, so hit us up.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Crucible is usually a lot more in the darkness. I kind of feel like I'm on a side of the sun right now. So I apologize for my brightness, but you guys can find Crucible on Instagram and Facebook, as I mentioned before. We do have an upcoming show in July that is almost fully booked. July 10th is the next in-person show. And we will be announcing future shows as well in the coming months. We're looking at doing one in probably August, September, and October, since the pandemic has started to clear up. So yeah, just look for those announcements.
And it's my turn. Yeah. You can find me on Facebook, Twin Knives. Just look for that. Our logos, a couple of little Italian switchblades doing a cute little cross thing. Also on Instagram, Twin Knife Productions. The next thing coming out from Twin Knives is an interactive album in July. No title yet, but that's what's coming.
I just wanted to say one last thing to Allison, if I could. I just wanted to thank all of the creators that are on here. You guys are badass, and we love being able to bounce ideas off of you. And it just really feels like a extreme immersive family. So just wanted to say thank you to all my Haunt fam out there. So
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you all for being here tonight, sharing your wisdom and expertise, and thank you to everybody who watched. I hope you have a great night. We'll see you next time.